Hi there, this is Billy Earl on Eastern Shore Politics. We are extremely grateful today to have Addie Eckhardt, State Senator from Wicomico, Dorchester, and Talbot, here as our special guest. Senator, thank you so much for coming. We are so appreciative.
Well, I'm so glad to be here today and talk with you.
I know this is a very busy time for you. You probably have 20 things that you're supposed to be doing in one time frame. But again, thank you for being so gracious.
True, thank you.
Politics is a fascinating subject for many reasons. And I have found in my life that there are things that I look for in politicians and things that I'm sometimes concerned that aren't there. And one of these is experience. I don't think there's any way to teach experience. I think either you were there, been there, done that, have the t-shirt, or you weren't. What are your thoughts on this race and you and the element of experience?
Well, thank you very much for that question. I do think and believe that experience matters. It's an opportunity, as I have worked through the legislative ranks, if you will. I mean, I started ultimately with building at Central Committee. I'm not expecting to get into politics because I'm a psych nurse. And, you know, I am used to having other people look good, solving problems, trying to find the uniqueness about individuals, affirming that, helping them to build self-esteem, and learning to practice respect, you know, for everybody and get others to do likewise. In my nursing career, I've spent a lot of time what I call modeling.
Okay.
If I want somebody to do something, the best way to do it is model it, be it.
Okay.
You know, kind of practice what you preach. So it's been important for me as I got involved in the Republican Central Committee to be able to build the party, to be able to bring people together. And in the Republican circle, sometimes that's a little bit like herding cats because we all have our very unique abilities and we're pretty independent thinkers.
Oh, yeah.
And we do like things our way most of the time. So how you put that mix together and capture the best essence out of everybody to make something work has been kind of the challenge, I think, in the whole political realm. As I've gotten into it, and the more I've gotten into it, the more I've really enjoyed problem solving, feeling like I'm MacGyver. You know, you're presented a situation, you're given the players, you have no choice or control over it, and then you have to figure out whether you're going to do scotch tape or bubble gum or duct tape or paper clips to be able to figure it out and then try to fix it.
How interesting. That's a great metaphor. I never really thought about that as an academic training that would be so perfect for entering into the petri dish we call politics.
Right. So my background in psych nursing is trying to, is to help people be all that they can be, help groups to be all that they can be. So what a better framework, if you will, working with systems, trying to get dysfunctional systems and be able to help people either learn something or be able to communicate in a different way to get folks to kind of do things that maybe they didn't think they wanted to do, but ultimately it's their choice and their control without infringing on the other person, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you keep things separate. So when I got into politics, scared to death, when I finally was elected, I lost my first campaign, not by virtue of, I knocked on 10,000 doors, I did everything you needed to do, but it wasn't the right time because there were two other people that I was running against, and we actually split the vote and somebody else went in. So those things happened. And after licking my wounds and feeling all down in the mouth about it, I picked myself up and kept on going, building the party, which is essential. Back then, we had a bigger tent party. So we left room for everybody. And I remember one when I finally was elected to the House of Delegates in 1994, Bob Kittleman and Bob Flanagan were our leaders. And Bob Kittleman was just a wonderful example of letting me know that we would have caucus positions, but we each were able to retain our uniqueness and disagree. And we would agree to disagree even within the party as long as we kept everybody informed about where we were, and that would be respected. And that was quite a gift to be able to have worked under a leader like that,
right,
who was kind of a quiet, silent kind of leader. But it helped me to understand the importance of having a bigger tent and giving people enough room that they could have their individuality on positions, but then work together for the common good. And that's something that I've taken with me, whether it's in the Women's Caucus or it's in other groups. And it's important to me to always build up, and try not to be into situations where people get divided or you create so much anxiety that it brings out the worst in everybody, because we do our best thinking in periods of sort of higher anxiety, but not anxiety that gets you to the point of either panic or freezing. You want to be able to have enough of a balance between being motivated and being able to think clearly, and at the same time be deliberate and respectful in that process. So that's what I find the useful tools that I bring as a psych nurse. But then with the years of experience and practice of working with very many different cultures, because in our district we have many different cultures, even cultures within cultures. And having an appreciation for the uniqueness of each of those groups of people, and then being able to build across those lines and help folks be comfortable with each other enough to get things done. One of the, I guess, my best opportunities that I had over the last 8 years was to work with the Baltimore City folks and Salisbury when we were working on a situation with blighted and broken glass houses, and vacant properties, and we were trying to figure out, how can we get some of these properties improved or off the tax rolls, or be able to deal with them in a different way. And we had a wonderful community development leader who was able to work on a tax sale issue. So we put together this work group, and there had been some preliminary work done, and then I joined forces because of needs in Cambridge and needs in Salisbury. So we established a task force. Now, I didn't know when I went to the Senate that if you put in a bill to establish a task force, guess what? You get to chair it.
Okay, so you got to carry the heavy water.
And over in the House, that never happened. When you go to the Senate, and you have to be careful what you wish for, because if you put something in, you better be prepared to be one of the lead players.
Okay.
Well, I thought, that's fine. I'm a Republican. Fat chance they're not going to let me be a lead player because, we're in a Democratic majority up in Annapolis. And, sometimes I believe I'm the token Republican in these things. But it's very important to keep your options open.
Agreed.
Because you never know what you need to be a MacGyver and put things together and make things happen. So I wound up being assigned to this task force, and the other delegate who was assigned was the vice chair of the Ways and Means Committee. So I thought, oh boy, this is a big guy, ex-football player. There is no way I'm going to have 2 cents in this situation. So we had our first meeting in Baltimore City in the mayor's office, and we invited everybody and their brother. We wanted to make sure, everybody says, you've got to control things and manage it. Forget that.
Yeah.
We just wanted everybody who wanted to play ball get in the game. And so I had kind of a preliminary proposal, and I show up a little bit late, and a whole room full of people, and it was like, oh my gosh, whew, where these? I thought, well, where's the delegate? Oh well, he's not able to make it today, Addie, it's yours. And I'm going,
Bada boom.
okay. So I decided right then and there, after we all introduced ourselves, so I knew who was at the table, that I was just going to lay the cards on the table and see what happened. Well, it hit the fan. And you could see everybody go, we can't do that, you know. And so everybody got really animated, and we said, it's all right. I want to hear from everybody. I want to hear from everybody.
Yeah.
So we spent the next 2 hours going around, well, we don't like this. This will never work, and this and that. I said, well, come on, tell me what's not good about it. What do you like? Well, we got it all out on the table, and it was interesting because right then and there I thought, well, that was a different tactic to take. No ground rules. I didn't lay out ground rules. I just said we would speak one at a time and hear everybody out, and we'd get it out and then see what kind of resonated, and didn't resolve anything on that meeting, and just kind of left it hanging and said, okay, we're going to meet again. Well, we had several meetings like that. The other delegate never showed up.
Never showed up.
So I was able to work it through, and we just said, well, we're just going to build consensus. We're just going to see what works, what doesn't work. If we all don't agree with it, then we're putting it out. We're only going to work on things that we can all agree on. Well, curiously enough, we kept adding new people, because somebody would get the word and they'd spread the word. There was so much chatter outside of the group that people would come, I guess for curiosity, to see what this crazy group was, because everybody got an opportunity to speak. And it really sifted out to where we had kind of a consensus agenda of what we were going to do. And we had to figure out whether we were going to put it in one big bill or we were going to put it in 6 or 7 different pieces. Well, we decided we were going to do 6 or 7 different pieces because we were going to be strategic, because we knew people in different places and we could involve them in the process along the way, so that when it got to their committee and we gave them a briefing before we actually did the bill hearing, they would be informed and at least have a general knowledge of what happened. We submitted 9 pieces of legislation that year.
Wow.
And 6 passed.
And
it was absolutely fascinating to me, and it was kind of one of the, I guess, the highlights of my term.
Okay.
But it taught me a lesson that, and I had to calm everybody down repeatedly, because folks would say, well, this group's going to do this, and they're going to come in. But we had laid it out right in the beginning to get it all out. And people made it clear where they were. So that was really helpful in understanding what we needed to do, where we needed to have more discussion to kind of come to consensus. And of course we got criticized because we never took any votes. You know, it was strictly consensus. We either all agreed or we didn't do it, and that's just how it was. But we laid that out. So it was a very useful experience, and it taught me that you can have a lot of difference in a room, differing opinions, and keep working at it as long as everybody was willing to stay at the table.
Wow. Tell me about your early life and what led you into nursing. Was that a family?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I grew up wanting to be a missionary.
Okay.
So when I was involved in an organization as a child called Pioneer Girls, and I remember these nurses were the missionaries on the mission field, and I thought that would be the direction I might want to go. And I wanted to go to college, to either be a teacher or nursing. And my parents said, no, we just don't have the funds for that.
Right.
So if you want to do anything, you can go in the military. Well, I grew up in the 50s and the 60s, so I was not interested in going into the military at that point in time. My mom had worked in the arsenal. My dad and his brothers were all in the military, but no. I wanted to go to college with everybody else. So I wound up, doing the usual candy scraper route, and then went on to nursing school on a scholarship. But I guess as I look back on my life, what was always interesting to me was learning new things. Scouts was a fun thing to me because you were always doing something, going somewhere, learning something new, and I was just very curious as a child. And my dad was very creative, self-made, so he did everything himself. So you grew up learning to fix things and learning to grow things, and just had a variety of hobbies and habits. So went on into nursing school, and from there, actually, we worked, got married. We moved to Texas. I was in Young Life. If you've ever heard of Young Life. I became a Christian in Young Life really earlier as a child, because I've always been involved in the church and sang in nursing homes and things like that. So it was. Are
you going to break into song here any minute?
Oh, you never can tell. I did a lot of theater.
Go ahead.
On a wonderful day like today,
there we go.
I defy any cloud to appear in the sky.
And see, this is the kind of interview I've always wanted. Somebody to break into song, and actually on key.
Okay. Our boys and my husband are the ones that are on key. I'm usually the one off key, but that's
I don't believe that.
So anyway,
we're in Texas.
We actually, we got married. I back up on this story. I got my RN one day. I turned 21 the next day, and I got married the next day. So my dad would not object. I was of age, so I could do that. And then we moved to Baltimore, and we were doing full-time Young Life ministry in Baltimore inner city at the time. And then decided the Lord might want us to do something else, and we decided to go to South Texas to manage a Young Life property. Well, within 9 months, and I was pregnant at the time with our second child. Within 9 months, we got washed out by a hurricane and wound up friends of ours who had, we met in Baltimore, psychiatrist and his wife wanted us to come to Cambridge. We said, oh, no, we're not coming to Cambridge. This is riot time. We are not coming to Cambridge. Oh, that's right, because it was during the riots in Baltimore and then Cambridge's incident. And so we went South Texas. So 9 months later, they call us up. Are you ready to come to Cambridge? All right, we'll come to Cambridge. So
wait, you were on the coast in South Texas?
Port Aransas.
I love Port Aransas.
I love Port Aransas.
Used to live in Fort Worth?
Yep. Love Port Aransas. We could go down to Mexico whenever we wanted to, and up to San Antone whenever we wanted to.
Great seafood in that town too.
Like that way. Well, that's
not as good as here, but still.
I don't know. The shrimp are pretty good.
They're not bad.
The red snapper are very good if you don't get mixed up with the guys that are doing drugs on the shrimp boats.
It's got that reputation.
Yeah, a little bit down there. So we wound up coming up to Cambridge, and before we left, we found a property. But we're shy about $100 within a couple of weeks. Somebody asked me if I wanted a job at the local hospital. They needed a nurse.
Perfect.
So I went back into psych nursing and stayed there. We had an exchange student who was from Africa. So we had very interesting experience living in Cambridge, having an African student in our household, which is great because many of our friends growing up in Cambridge, many of our friends actually were in the African American community, and that was fun. And all of my coworkers, I found out later on, had been freedom fighters.
Okay.
But never knew that the whole time I worked with them until folks were retired. And of course, you know, we built very good working relationships and had a good experience for our years. When my husband and I both worked at Eastern Shore Hospital Center, and I still do part-time there. Keep my fingers in the psych work because that's really important. And we're losing psych nursing. And that's been important to me, to be able to cultivate and grow more nurses who really are focused on how to do true psychiatric nursing. A lot of my years at Eastern Shore Hospital Center was spent doing staff development. I keep my finger in it, so that's my easier job. But again, it gives me the opportunity to work with a variety of people and find out the best that folks have to offer, and then help folks, you know, use that and build on that. So I kind of work from a strengths model, and gets me into trouble sometimes because I'm always looking at what good people can bring instead of being a little suspicious. Campaigns do raise the anxiety, so you have to be a little bit cautious.
They do.
Because the best people will turn out and do things that you just didn't expect. And so you roll with it. Again, you know, versatility and flexibility is important.
Such a big part of life. Tell me about your race, your primary race that you're in now.
Well, I filed. Curiously enough, my husband and I have always had this, it's time to quit, this year, well in advance of the primary, or even thinking about it. He said, you know what, I've kind of gotten used to this. If you're going to run one more time, you better go ahead and do it.
Uno mas.
So I thought, well, good. This is a good sign. So went off and filed. Realizing that, you know, my rule of thumb for any place is about 10 years, give or take a few. So that's what, 2 terms or 3 terms. I stayed in the house longer than I wanted to, but things changed. You know, I mean, sometimes, I don't know if everybody experiences that on a job, but whether it was my nursing day job or whatever, you go through good periods where you believe you're being really productive and making a difference, and other times like, why am I putting up with this, you know, kind of thing. And I went up and down with the change of administrations. You know, every 4 years, the 4-year cycle is very different. They're like raising children. Each one has its own personality and their own cast of characters. So, and some groups work better together than others. Yeah. You know, sometimes there's better leadership than others, so it makes it much more interesting. And I'm a little competitive, so I like to be challenged to a certain point, because it brings the best out of me, I think, for all of us. You rise to the occasion. And so I stayed longer than I would have. People wanted me to run against who I ran against for years, and I just never thought I had what it would take to be able to do that. And finally, when I did and succeeded, everything that I had hoped for that I would achieve in the Senate happened. It was interesting because the groups were smaller. You had a better opportunity to state your case because the committees are smaller, so you have direct input. You get to be maybe 1 or 2 voices. So you have to always be aware of what the minority position is and state that when given the opportunity. In the House, you're always competing just to be heard because everybody wants to talk. And I'm more, let me size it up and figure out where I am. And when I have that solid, then you'll hear from me. Or if you step on my toe, you will hear from me, you know.
One or the other.
One of the other. So that was very interesting. Many people said that the Senate was a very place where you were alone a lot. You did, well, that never bothered me because I've always had so much to do, you know, and I work late at night when I'm in the Senate anyway, because I try to read as many of the bills as I can, try to answer as many as the email, and then prepare bills in the Senate. There's an opportunity. People brought me all kinds of bills. I almost had to say, no more, don't bring me any more, because you have to have a good staff to be able to work that bill, or you have to have worked it before if you want passage. So I've learned through the years what are the best case scenario, if you will, to get things to pass. You know, so I usually look for a leader in the other party to build a relationship with. And through the years, I've worked with the Women's Caucus. Even before I was a legislator, as I was president of the Nurses Association and worked on their legislative committee. So I had good rapport with all of the Democratic and Republican women when I went into Annapolis the first time. And I tried to maintain that, even though it's primarily a Democratic focus. You know, there were a lot of issues in the Women's Caucus we had to agree to disagree on, or not to talk about. You know, if we knew. And fortunately, I was I'm deviating, but I was involved enough in the Women's Caucus that when Governor Earl was elected, the Women's Caucus decided that maybe it might be a good time to have a Republican in leadership. See, prior to then, there were no Republicans in the leadership in the Women's Caucus because it was primarily Democratic. And then they would just have us, the Republicans, be secretary or treasurer, but never go above that.
Let me ask you a question. What challenges do you see in this primary? What's the thing here that's most important to you? And what do you see as problems?
I think the biggest challenge for me is getting a message out, helping people understand who I am and what I stand for and what I've done. People who've known me through the years know me, I think, fairly well. I've maintained a news report, or we do a newsletter. When we were in session, we did a newsletter every week in session, so that's like 12 weeks, and then we'd stop it and only periodically send out. When the pandemic hit, I thought it was really important to keep people informed of what was going on, and my tendency is, as a nurse, stick to the facts. You know, put your opinion in it. So I tend to write that way. I may write, you know, some think this, some think that, or maybe sometimes what I believe, but I stay away from that generally just to do the facts and give people as much information as I can so that they can draw their own conclusions on it. So I've been able to keep a lot of people in that loop, and I get a lot of positive feedback about that. I don't know how to reach people. I got bumped off of Facebook. I don't know, Facebook and I just don't seem to get along very well. So I've tried to figure out, how do you get a message out if you're not able to connect with people other than being out and around and on a newsletter?
It's a problem that almost everybody has. As one of the most respected senators in the state of Maryland, we certainly hope that we see you back in office. it's our considered opinion that you are the obvious choice. We are running out of time. This is Billy Earl with Eastern Shore Politics, and this is Senator Addie Eckhardt. All of y'all, no excuse for not voting. It's part of your obligation in a country that gives you rights and gives you so many gifts. So everybody vote. Thank you. Stay safe. Namaste.